Hello, and welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings and get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of these stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village. And if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Guilbault Girls Show. I'm your host, Karen Guilbault, along with my husband,
Jesse Guilbault.
And today's guests are Kathy and Dave Clemens. Hello. Kathy and Dave have two boys. Drew is 19 and has autism spectrum disorder. And Dawson is 18, which you will actually hear from in a separate interview that I did with him, which he is amazing. So since the boys were only 11 months apart, it was very clear to them that there was something different about Drew from a very young age. He lacked eye contact and language, played with his toys differently, and had epic meltdowns anytime they took him somewhere new or unfamiliar. Kathy states it's been a journey of many ups and downs, but one thing remains, and that's unconditional love. Unconditional love by Kathy and Dave as his parents, his younger brother, their family, and their community. In that unconditional love, they have seen so much progress in his journey and are forever grateful. So today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that journey of raising a child with autism and how it has affected various aspects of their personal, social, and family life. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you guys on the show. It's been a hot minute. So I had met Kathy years ago through the NCR's parent advocacy classes and our county's special education citizens advisory committee back when I lived in Cecil County. Kathy's been a true advocate, not only for Drew, but for so many others. So let's go ahead and dive in. Do you want to start with the first question with them?
Sure. And it's a multi-part question. At what age did you start the testing process for Drew? What did that consist of, and what were each of your initial reactions to the diagnosis?
So, ironically, we were sitting in our bedroom one night watching an episode of Super Nanny. I'm sure you guys remember when that show. And, Drew, he had behavioral issues back then, which we know why now, but we didn't understand it back then. And we were just thinking, like, was this bad parenting? Like, are we not parenting him the way that we should? And is this why he's having these meltdowns? So there was a child on there that was having similar meltdowns that had autism. And it was like instantly it clicked with me that that was what was going on with Drew. And Dave can tell you, I got obsessed. I made it my life's mission to figure out what was going on. I took him to the pediatrician and was told that I'm basically being a paranoid mother and that he's fine. We had to wait, 6 months to get him into Kennedy Krieger. Mm-hmm. We finally got him in when he was about 18 months old, and he ended up falling asleep midway through the testing. So we had to go back again and finish the testing. And I'll never forget it. It was almost like sort of like a factory or something. We were sitting there and they come back in after they did the testing, and they basically told me that my son had pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, which now I understand is autism spectrum disorder, just a different phrasing for it. Because he was so young at the time. They weren't necessarily prepared to say that he had autism, but they could tell he was on the spectrum. Somehow. And I looked at the nurse practitioner that was reading these results to me, and I said, well, what does that mean? Does he have autism? And she was just like, no, well, maybe, but it's too early for us to really delve that far in. And I just felt like it was so cold and not not really how I would have addressed something like that with a parent, because as I'm sure you guys know, when your child is diagnosed with a disability, whether it's from birth or whether you find out later, you kind of grieve who that child was supposed to be or who you had planned that child to be in your mind. And I just felt like they were cold. I cried the whole way home from Kennedy Krieger. And, you know, when I got home, Dawson, I think, mentioned to you that my dad, he's my stepdad technically, but he's my dad in every sense of the word, that he has a brother on the spectrum. And when I got home, I was so upset. And my dad said, "This is your same child. Like, that label isn't going to change who he is. And no matter what it is or how bad it is, we will figure it out. But he is still your child, and that label doesn't change anything about how much you love him or who he is to you." And it instantly changed my perspective from like doom and gloom to, okay, now I got to figure out how to fix this or how to make it better. And that's really where that journey started for me, in trying to bring awareness and make people understand more about autism, so that my son and everyone like him could, you know, live in the world and not have such a difficult time doing it.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
Well, that's about the same thing that I get out of it. But I'm more of a type of person that, you know, learn things on the go and just roll with the way things are. And she's the one who dove in and made sure everything was going to be okay and how to handle things and what we need to do. And I'm pretty much just follow along with that.
And I'm bossy.
And I hear you bottle your feelings up too. So
she's bossy. I'm just saying. I'll just follow along and do what I need to do for my son and my family.
He's I think Dawson mentioned this. Dave doesn't talk about feelings, which is why I'm glad that he's doing this, because, you know, I probably will learn something, because he doesn't always share how he feels about anything, let alone this whole situation. So, you know, I mean, fortunately, we've had a lot of support from my family. My mom and dad moved in with us when Drew and Dawson were 3 and 4. They moved into a house that we were renting, and then we bought this house that we've been in ever since. I think we bought it back in 2009.
It works perfectly for us because it has 2 separate living areas. You know, there's a whole separate kitchen and laundry room and a bath and a half down there and 2 bedrooms. So it's the perfect house for our situation.
Yeah, because when we were all living in one house, it was quite difficult with 2, like, my mom and I both have very strong personalities, and my dad and Dave are very much alike, where they're just kind of passive, and, you know, but it was difficult. But now, like, there are some days that we don't even see each other, but they're always downstairs, and even though my kids are grown, they provide a level of support to my kids that really is priceless. You know, my kids don't even understand what it's like to go visit grandparents, because they've always had them here, and they don't even remember a time where they didn't live with us.
Yeah. I know when I did the interview with Dawson too, I was talking about asking him about discipline and stuff, because sometimes JD would be like, oh, because he would hear it from me, he would hear it from my mom, he would hear it from Jesse. So he's like, what is going on? Yeah. It's great in one aspect, and in some aspects it's hard, but you know, it's and I wouldn't change a thing. My mother has always been there for us, and you know, just that, like you said, the level of support, because there's just so much on so many different levels. So yeah. And I know too, you know, it was hard for you guys because you and Dave both, you know, work full-time jobs, you know, with you being in the managerial position for a large financial institution. And I can't talk. Dave's job, requires traveling throughout the tri-state area. Can you share a little bit more about what that looked like and how much stress and pressure you were all under?
Well, luckily at the time, Kathy's mother wasn't working. So we kind of had like a built-in babysitter there. And that really helped out a lot of stress of the work situation anyway.
When Drew went into school, he started out in preschool at the age of 3 at Bayview Elementary. And my mom drove him back and forth to school because I was afraid to let him ride the school bus. So he went there in their preschool and pre-K program. And then when we bought this house, his elementary school changed to Charlestown Elementary. So fortunately, when he moved into kindergarten, Dawson also got into the pre-K program over at Charlestown. And I was comfortable letting him ride the bus with his brother. And, but, as like kids with autism have such sensory overload at times. His has always come out in behavior. And so we started having daily phone calls from the school because he would scream and, sometimes he would throw things. And honestly, I would never have been able to keep my job if it weren't for my mom to be able to go over, and sometimes she would be able to calm him. Sometimes she would, bring him home. But if I would have had to leave work every single time the school called, there would have been no way for me to keep my job and no way, for us to be able to support this household because, my parents live here and they do pay, a very low rent just for, utilities and things like that. But when we first moved in, we were pretty house poor. I couldn't not have a job.
Yeah.
And it was, a lot of people, even my sisters in the past have said, like, I don't know how you can live with mom and dad. Like that is, and I'm like, but they're doing something for me that I can never repay them for. I never had to worry about someone hurting Drew or, dropping him off at a daycare when he didn't even talk until he was in about 3rd grade. Yeah. So, those were stresses and anxieties that I didn't have to worry about. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were plenty more to worry about. Right. That, those things I never had to worry about. And, my parents, my kids are grown now, we don't need my parents to live here, but they will always live here because, this is their home and their presence here has made it a home. And I can't even imagine them not being here.
Right. Yeah.
I'd say tourists, they're never leaving anyway. Even if we sell the house, they come with the house.
That's
Tell me about your experience as a family on how raising a child with autism has affected your life the most, and how, if any, has having a child with a disability affected your social life?
I would say when the boys were younger, and because my mom watched them while we worked, my husband is a drummer. He's been in bands, since that's actually how I met him. He was in my dad's band.
Oh, get out. I didn't know that.
Yeah. He was the drummer in my dad's band. And so it was hard when they were younger because I wouldn't ask my mom to watch them on the weekends. And he was going out and he was playing music with his friends. And
they did so much for us during the week. We didn't want to hold them up on their weekends and all that too.
And that's exactly how it was with my mom. I would feel guilty, or she would be like, oh, I just did the X, Y, and Z. Now you want me to watch? I'm like, yeah, but we need to go out, and we didn't have anybody else to rely on or that we could trust. So, but so I hear you that way.
Work is not really, a break. It's not a social experiment. You're going to work, but, so I stayed home a lot when the kids were younger, and it did create, like, there's a sense of loneliness when you have a child with a disability that, and you're watching your friends go out and do normal things with as a family, and we couldn't do that with Drew. Everything took an extensive amount of preparing and thinking about, like, what if this, what if that. And one thing that I will say that the advice that my mom gave me was, take him anyway, because maybe someday he'll want to be there. And so we would take him places, and most often we would have to leave early because he would, tantrum or scream. But over time, that got less and less because we kept exposing him to these like scary things in his mind. The sensory stuff that he was most sensitive to would have been like loud noises, large crowds of people. He didn't like places that he wasn't familiar with. He didn't like people to talk to him or touch him. So I can't tell you, I spent countless like family events and things with him sitting in my lap screaming
and crying to the point where she just couldn't take it anymore because he wouldn't stay with anyone else. And we just had to leave eventually. But it was good advice that her mom did give us, though, because now he knows that if we're going somewhere and he has to go with us, that he just has to go and he has to, work through it himself. So at first we had a bunch of problems with it. Like I said, him crying all the time. But
yeah, you got to learn those coping skills.
Yeah, over the years of doing that, he just knows he's got to go, and it's good for him to get out instead of just being sheltered at the house all the time, which he would love to do. But
yeah, he loves it when we leave him here by himself, because he's like, where are you going and when are you coming back? Like, I think he likes the downtime. Yeah. I've always been Drew's person, since it's been he and I, like, we kind of conquered and divided, which I'm sure you guys have had to do.
Mm-hmm.
He would go with Dawson and I always had Drew. So, so much time in the car, music therapy, behavioral therapy, doctor's appointments, running back and forth to Kennedy Krieger, running back and forth to Bel Air to music therapy. There's a bond there that, it'll never go away. Like, I'm his person. Yeah. And, he looks to me to fix things. And, it's really, I think the reason why he got into music is because sometimes he would scream so loud in the car, I would turn the music up so I didn't have to hear him. And now, like, that's what he listens to, is what I was listening to back during that time when we were in the car so much.
He particularly hates Led Zeppelin, which is my favorite band of all time. As you can tell by the shirt.
It sounds like, he's changed in his experience, but also a little bit of maturity has come about. And I can see that in what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think some people, people handle difficult situations in their own way. And for me, it was always important that, we are a very social family. Like, every weekend we have things going on. And I just couldn't imagine spending the rest of my life having this child that hated social situations. And it was really hard for me to even fathom that, because like I said, our house, people are here all the time. I didn't want him to be this like recluse that stayed in his room all the time and never came out. And, we let him do things on his terms. And, if we go somewhere that is sort of an unfavorable place, we give him a time limit. We're going until this time. And you can bet that when the clock strikes that time, he is right at my side saying, we're going now. But, it's a compromise, and we also figured out things like he has headphones if it's too loud. And, we've figured things out over the years in just learning and understanding more about his specific instance of autism. And my whole family, even, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, his cousins, everyone has always been very accommodating to make Drew comfortable. And, so that helps too when you're going to someone's house and they know that you're we're coming, and they will like have a space in their house for him to be able to go if it's too loud or if he needs a break.
Too many people are there, or
yeah.
Like
and it's like I've said before, it takes a village to raise a child to begin with, but when you add in a disability to that, you really see that in action. You can really see it when people they go out of their way. Even yesterday we were at a party, and Drew repeats himself 24/7, and he says the same things over and over and over again. And I was listening to my Aunt Patty, and like every time he said Sean Fuller is Tim McGraw's drummer, she said, "That's right, he is, buddy." And he must have said it 50 times in a matter of 30 minutes. And she never gets frustrated, or, and it's hard for us sometimes because, if we are home during the day, you hear that, you hear the same phrase over and over again. And sometimes it's hard to not have a tone when you're like, okay, I hear you. But, that's how he is relating to people, and he's communicating to you that this is important to him. And it's just I just feel grateful that people are so willing to kind of step into his world and listen to what he's saying and not be annoyed by it.
I think it's kind of wonderful too, where you're talking about the social aspect, where he's kind of come into that, but also with having such musical attentions in the family, drumming and your father's band, him kind of getting into the musical piece of it and doing musical therapy, because again, the loud noises can but him actually going in that direction. And then now these people are band members and researching it and knowing the knowledge of it too. That's
at what age did he start playing the drums? Because he plays, and just for people that don't know, he's also in his brother and him have a band, and he's a drummer.
Yeah, he started playing about 3 years ago.
Okay.
In our bedroom, in her large closet, I had an electronic drum set where I used to practice drumming, get to learn songs. And then one day, he was just in there tapping around on it, and he wouldn't let you teach him anything. He taught himself how to swim, taught himself how to ride a bike. So I was trying to get him to try something. I was like, "Here, you got to use your feet to do this." He's like, "No." And then after just a few weeks of doing that, he started using his feet. The next thing we know, he's full on drumming. And then to a point where, what was it, last year that we got him a drum set for Christmas? Or was it a year before?
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
We got him an electronic drum set first because this is a very loud house. I mean, you got two drummers, guitars, somebody's always singing, making music somehow. So we got him the electronic drum set, and he played on it briefly, but then he wanted an acoustic drum set. And that is where he spends. When you first started talking to Dawson, he was out there playing the drums. So I had to shut the door because this house it's just always loud, which is hilarious considering his sensitivity to noise, but he's the loudest person in the house.
Louder than I do.
Yeah. So, he was, I don't even really know what instigated it. It was just like one day I came home and he was in my closet playing the drums, and he just sat and one thing I will say about him is he will watch the same thing over and over and over again, even if it's the same 15 seconds. And I guess he was just watching how the drummer was banging on the drums to get whatever beat. And he started, so Drew loves Tim McGraw. Tim McGraw's life in this house. We have a cardboard cutout of Tim McGraw. Everything, Sundays are Tim McGraw days where he goes out and he plays like a whole set.
We're going to see him in June 20th.
We are going to see him too, and Drew doesn't know that yet.
Yay! We'll have to make sure we hook up there. All right, go ahead.
So in June too.
So he just taught himself, and up until that point, his only other obsession or interest was trains, and he still loves trains, but now he takes Tim McGraw with him to Strasbourg.
That's so funny. Can you describe you kind of already described your relationship with him. Well, Kathy, you did. Dave, how would you describe your relationship with Dawson? And then also each one of your family members. What's their relationships kind of like?
Dawson or Drew?
Drew. Sorry, Drew. Drew and Dawson. Now I'm getting them all mixed up.
What was the question? Sorry.
So describe your relationship with him, and then Kathy, you can, or either you can just kind of describe his individual relationship with each one of your family members within the household.
We're just buddies, I guess we can say. We do a lot of stuff together. He always comes to me and talks about drums and things like that, and he usually goes to his mom's for everything else. So.
He does the cooking though.
Yeah, I does.
Oh yes. Dawson said that nobody can make chicken nuggets like you.
Yeah. I tend to burn things, which is why now Drew asks for Elio's black, because he prefers it burnt, because
that's the way she cooked it.
I'm always burning things. I am not a good cook. So if he's hungry and Dave's home, he goes to Dave. Yeah. And you guys do bond over music and
food and things like that. Just fun stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
He goes to her for the serious stuff, and I'm just a fun guy.
Well, I've kind of always managed.
That's how you've always been.
Yeah, like I feel like that's probably common in dads, right?
Yeah.
Dads are the buddy, and like in my household, my dad was always the buddy, and my mom was she was like always the one managing everything else. So, I've always managed Drew's IEP and, managed all of the conversations with school, all of the phone calls. It's just been my relationship. And I think he sees me more as the disciplinarian, because when the school would call me, one thing I will say is we've always held Drew accountable. We've never let him use his disability as an excuse to be a brat or a jerk. So if he knows the rules in school, and if he didn't follow the rules and he had some sort of behavioral issue from the time he was very little, we would take his electronics from him, which is his literal lifeline. And over time, sometimes he would just have like a little blip in the day, and it wasn't anything that the school would, think was a big deal. And he would come home and he would hand me his iPad and say, I'm not allowed to have electronics today because I threw my pencil. Or he learned the rules, and he understood that there are consequences for your actions. And like he, in third grade, he did go to an alternative school because
I was going to ask you about that, how the transition was and what were the differences that you noticed.
High Road saved Drew's life, and I have been very vocal about that.
Absolutely.
It wasn't Cecil County Public Schools' fault. They did not have the support that they needed for a child like Drew. And when he went into High Road, it still took a long time, but he's the person he is today because High Road invested the time into his behaviors, and we were always on the same page, where there wasn't an inconsistency, and like between teachers, there wasn't an inconsistency with how they manage the behaviors. And, I was always in line with them to make sure that the rules were the same, whether he was in school or at home. And,
that helped a lot.
I truly think that's why he was so successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as my family members are concerned, Drew has a special relationship with each person, and that relationship is theirs. He has certain things that he likes to say to certain family members. He has certain things that he likes to do with family members. So, my dad likes to take him to see the trains. He likes to drive. He likes to ride in my dad's truck. He's got one of those giant like F-350 trucks or whatever. So he likes to ride with him. Graham always takes him to McDonald's or, takes him, fun places. And then I have my Aunt Tara, who, she'll also take time to take him up to Strasbourg and take him places.
And Aunt Patty.
My Aunt Patty, she takes him bowling and takes him to the batting cages and things like that. But each of those relationships, they look different because Drew tends to find like a certain thing with people that he relates, and he never forgets it.
That's that.
So,
he used to have a nickname for everybody. It was usually cartoon characters.
All right.
Bugs Bunny or,
Yeah, when he first started talking, I think it might have been more comfortable for him to be
Address
someone
people.
else, because he was always like, he might be Sonic the Hedgehog or he might be Yogi Bear, but he would give people nicknames and he would have conversations with you, very scripted around these characters. And that was when he first started talking, and he did it to everyone. He did it in school, he did it at home, he did it with my family. And eventually, he just stopped. It was almost like, and people were very disappointed that he was not calling them these nicknames anymore. But, I guess he finally got comfortable enough in his own self that he could communicate as Drew versus whatever character he
And it seemed like the cartoon character or nickname that he gave them, it went right along with their personality. I guess that's how he identified with them.
Yeah, he called me Mr. Water Noose, which was like the boss in Monsters Inc. So I'm fairly confident he thinks I'm bossy too.
Got to read between the lines there.
So I know you guys, had some hard times as well, along with the frustrations and the meltdowns that you had mentioned that he's had. How did you get through them, and what advice would you have for others who, just had a child diagnosed? And what comes to my mind is I remember back when I still lived in Cecil County, I think we were going to the classes and stuff. I remember he was going through a period of time where he, it was flipped. He was up all night and slept all day.
Yeah, so one of the things that we had to do was we had to connect with a psychiatrist, because Drew is very ADHD in the sense that he can't focus. So he takes a medication to help him focus. He also takes a mood stabilizer, because I'm sure you probably also remember, like, he would destroy classrooms. He would rip things down. He would throw things.
Wasn't he peeling the paint?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, he did that
in your room.
Entire wall, peeled the paint off of it.
Yes.
So to replace it, we actually got some bead board that you can't pick because it's wood.
He actually picked the drywall through to Dawson's room so he could lay in his bed and look in Dawson's room.
Oh my word.
It was like his mind just doesn't naturally shut off. So he has to take medication at night to go to sleep.
It's just the paint, if it had a flake on it, he would pick it, and then that would lead to another flake, and he just kept picking and picking.
He does that with his clothes. Like, you don't know how much money we spend in clothes, because if there's one strand, he pulls it, and then his clothes fall apart. So he's very OCD about things. He likes things to be a certain way. Of course, he can be a slob, but he can, like, this I'm sure would drive him crazy to have like this spray on clothing.
Yeah, even with food, he likes it cut up a certain way, and he doesn't like it any other way. And when he has to bite things, he doesn't like to bite for something.
He shoves everything in his mouth. So we cut up his chicken nuggets, we cut up his pizza, because I'm terrified he's going to choke. Shoving, like, you give him a whole mozzarella stick, he'll shove the whole thing in his mouth.
We had to get medication to curb these. Activities.
So the medications have been a lifesaver, and I've always been very adamant that I don't want Drew to be on a medication that's going to change who he is. I don't want him to be like, walking around like falling asleep during the day or anything like that. So he's on very low doses, and it's only been maybe twice that he's had to get an increase in those medications, because he seems to be very good at self-managing. Like, he knows when he's getting overwhelmed, and he will say to me, I'm getting upset, or I need to take a break. And he's been in the past few years able to do that even in the school setting, where he will say, I need a break, I need a sensory break. And they also, you also know the signs to look for, but he's been very good at advocating for himself now, where as when he was a kid, it would just come out, like he would just let out these screams.
Blood curdling.
And it's been hard, like you feel lonely sometimes because, you are dealing with something that you feel like you are the only one in the world that is dealing with it. And it kind of makes you feel alone. It's had an impact on our marriage. We've had a lot of ups and downs. I'm a communicator, he's not. And it's just hard. The only thing that I can say is that, when push comes to shove, we know that we have to figure it out. You have to somehow be able to, like let your guard down and talk to each other, or, and he knows, like I'm the kind of person that if I'm stressed out about something, the slightest thing, like him breathing next to me, can irritate my life.
Never ends.
This is true.
But when the boys were younger, I didn't really have an opportunity to like have friends or, have time with my friends and have a social life. Now that they've gotten older, like pretty much every year I take a girls trip, and those types of things as a mom gives me that time to just get away from it. And I don't have to be Drew's mom. I don't have to be Drew's advocate. I don't have to worry about Dawson and, him figuring out life and this and that. I can just be me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you, as a mom, for my own personal perspective, I felt like for a long time I got lost in, I didn't even know who I was because I was so busy being something for Drew. That was my entire life. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know that I've ever verbalized that before, but that's really how I felt. I felt like I just completely lost myself in all of it. And I don't regret it. Mm-hmm. We have the life that we have now because we sacrificed a lot when the boys were younger. But it was very hard and very lonely. And I know he was lonely too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because it just puts you in a place where it's like, your child is everything. And like, it almost like the marriage stops and gets on pause for a little while you try to figure things out. And that could be a lonely place for sure.
And I mean, from the divide and conquer, he's going one way, I'm going the other. And, you might pass each other in the hallway like, hey, or, you might connect when you lay down to go to sleep. But by then you're just exhausted that you just roll over and fall asleep and you don't even have the energy to talk.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. I remember, and I always go back to JD, and I still always, like, every once in a while, it still bothers me. I'm like, so many times where I wish I could go back and, but at the end of the day, I'm just so exhausted with everything. And I got them to bed and he wanted me to a hug, and then he wanted me to lay with him. I'm like, I couldn't because I still had stuff to do, but I wish I would have taken that time with him because I missed so much time, and then huh?
I always make sure that I always give her a kiss and a hug before I leave anywhere. She said I'm going off the war.
I'm like, you're not going off the war. You're going to gas, simmer down. But it's one of those things that that was lost for a long time, right. And we've had our own ups and downs. We've had our own issues within our marriage, and we've worked hard to figure it out and to try to communicate with each other because. At the end of the day, I know that, we have a forever child, and I'm not going to send Drew to his house. Like, we're not going to get divorced and I'm going to send Drew anywhere. Like, this is our job. This is what we committed to when we got married. Mm-hmm. And we just have to figure it out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And I know that that's probably not the approach that some people would take, but we made a commitment to each other, and, I've thought many times, like, why us? Like, why did we have this circumstance? And what really irritates me is when people say, oh, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I'm like, mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what makes you God's favorite, but, mm-hmm. I feel like I would feel even more alone if he wasn't here, because he's the only one that knows from the very beginning what our journey has been.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's been kind of my thing here lately. You know, the ship's passing in the night type thing. You know, just give a little peck, kiss, bye. I was like, no, I want give me a real kiss.
Well, you know what?
The connecting. You know what I mean? Versus I'm out and then just a regular kiss. Thank you. I'll see you later on.
Yeah, and then
I'm still here, you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah. But I remember he always used to like come in and like try to hug me or whatever. But I'm like in the middle of like, you know, cleaning or putting the dishes away, and I'm like, I got this and I got so much to do. I'm like, get away from me. Just go.
I do that on purpose just to get that reaction sometimes. So you know.
I feel like Karen and I are the same person because
I do the same thing. I come home from work and give her a big hug or something. She's like, okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's how a woman's mind thinks, is like, I have to get this, and this done. And, you know, for me, my job is pretty stressful. So, you know, I manage people at work, which is all sometimes like managing children.
And they're not on the same continent either. So.
And, you know, it's sometimes, you know, when and this is one thing that I've done for myself. You know, I struggled with my weight my whole life, and it's still a struggle. But no matter what, like no matter how lonely I feel or how sad, I do make that time for myself to go for a walk or go to the gym, you know, 4 or 5 times a week, because I found that if I don't do that, I get sucked into a depression that I just can't get myself out of. And it's really been life-changing for me, because it just, like, I don't know, there's just something about just taking that time. I don't know if it's just the time by myself. I can listen to podcasts about murder, which is my favorite thing. And
which I'm concerned about.
She starts taking notes.
I just don't have to do anything for anyone, you know, and I can do what I want for that hour. And then I come home and I get the million things that I have to get done. And it kind of adds time to my day, but it also helps me decompress
your mind together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that when I play drums, you know, that's my escape
Outlet.
from get frustrations out that way. And it's, you know, it's therapy for me.
Yeah.
Probably it's for Drew too, because I mean, he went to music therapy when he was younger, and that's kind of what turned him around a bit. He started getting language, and things started calming down a little bit when he started that.
The first time that I took him to music therapy,
he didn't want to
she wanted me to let him go in by myself, which I knew was a bad idea, but I was like, okay, you're the expert here. And I could hear him in there screaming, and I just opened the door. I sat down on the floor, put him on my lap. And when I did that, he calmed down. And then he started playing with the instruments and, you know, joining in to sing the songs, because she would play guitar and they would sing. And then the next time we went, he went in on his own, and I never had to go back in with him again. And it was just like he needed that comfort in that moment to know that it was okay. A room full of strangers and one thing about Drew is he's never liked kids, even when he was a kid. He's never liked kids. So, you know, being in a room with kids his own age, it was very uncomfortable for him. But after that, you know, he loved going, and, you know, I took him to music therapy for, I don't know, like 5 years.
Oh, wow.
It was quite a long time. And I still stay in touch with his music therapist.
It was twice a week, wasn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, I worked at the time, I worked in Wilmington, Delaware, would come home,
drive all the way here to Bel Air.
It was a lot. And I mean, I'll say, like, back then I didn't have the time to invest in my own mental health. I was too busy, you know, running around and getting the things done that needed to get done. And it's like I said earlier, if we hadn't done those things, if we hadn't made those sacrifices back then, we wouldn't have the life that we have now, and we wouldn't be seeing the independence and the growth in Drew that we see now. So it was totally worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hard. And, you know, I'll say that, you know, it's not, things don't always come easy. You know, most things don't come easy. You have to work for them. And that's one of the things that, one of the values that I've tried to instill in my kids is, you know, most people don't just get handed things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to work for them. And if you really want it, you have to put the work in. And, that's basically what we did. We put the work in to get him, to help him live his best life, and trust and believe he's living his best life now.
Yeah.
Playing drums all the time and listening.
Yeah.
That's what he loves.
Going back to the marriage thing, because I had read this article, a study that they did where it said most of the mothers felt as though they had neglected the needs of their spouse, leading to emotional distance and deterioration compared to previously healthy connections. So one had stated, there are times that you feel disconnected from your spouse and the child's needs are the priority. The husband is sort of second, third down in the line if there are other kids. And we both agreed that we've experienced that. Another one had said, I feel so tired and exhausted from the child and the house responsibilities. Therefore, at night, I feel unable to even kiss and hug my husband, in addition to spending more romantic time with him. We both said that too. And then on the flip side, the mothers identified a marked difference in the spouse's behavior following the diagnosis of autism. Typically, the mothers felt that their spouses had shut down, and that the spouses more often expressed aggressiveness and emotional distance, which was a negative change that affected the relationship and communication. Hence, they experienced a sense of loss. So I wouldn't say even shut down, just bottling your feelings up, maybe.
Yeah. I think also, and we even had this conversation yesterday, because when you're addressing something with Drew, tone is everything.
Right.
And if you come across like you're irritated or agitated with him, it will set him off. And Drew was back behind the drums playing, and Dave was messing with the sound, trying to get ready for the band performance. And he
needed to communicate with the guitarist and a couple other people, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. They couldn't hear what I was saying because he was banging on the drums. So I, a few times, asked him, to stop for a minute. And then I guess I just lost a little bit of cool there.
Mm-hmm.
So like, Drew, I need to talk to this person. And then that's it. I'm not playing. I'm going home. and it triggers that whole episode.
So I had to give him a stern talking to and say, you need to go fix what you did, because we have all these people here and they're dying to see Drew play drums. And, things can go really bad really quick.
Mm-hmm.
if you don't nip it in the butt. So he was able to go and talk to him, and he was fine. But if he hadn't gone and talked to him, this would have
stewed over the whole day,
and it would have been likely a meltdown. So it's one of those things where I think, because I have spent so much time with Drew and with educators and specialists and therapists, that I kind of inherently, I just know. But it's so easy to lose your patience in those moments and say, knock it off,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have this whole, like, it totally isn't worth it, because then you have like 3 hours of the aftermath of just showing your irritation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes we bottle that up, but we do it to each other. Like, we show each other that irritation. And I probably do it more so than him, where I'm like, like I said, you're breathing and it's annoying me. Stop. But it's not really his breathing that's annoying me.
Yeah. Even that same thing. What's wrong with you?
Playing when I turn blue. It's the wrong color.
But I've done it too, where I've kind of had a slightly like more aggressive tone towards Faith when she's done something, and she's like, yeah, you can't, and then, like I went to bed early last night, and they were following me, and I hear her going at Faith, what are you doing? And I'm listening. I'm like, okay, do I got to get involved here? What is going on there? She's like, you stuck the toothpaste tube in your mouth and shot it in your mouth. I'm like, yeah, I'm not even getting it.
And she goes, all right. She goes, don't judge me for what I'm about to do. And she literally did it so fast. She grabbed the toothpaste, flipped the top open, put the whole thing in her mouth and squeezed it, and then took the toothbrush and started doing it. She goes, and then she stopped, because it's just so much easier this way. I'm like, and I had a few choice words. I'm like, you can't do that. I'm like, we all use that toothpaste. I'm like, you just put those germs on there. And oh my God. I'm like, who taught you to do that? When did you start doing that? Oh yeah, it was, and I was tired, and I'm like, all right. It's like, all right, can I stay up and watch one more show? I'm like, okay, but when it's done, you can't just, because she tends to
mows
gag.
Yeah.
And she tends to take her time if she doesn't want to go to bed, like all kids do. And I'm like, you need to get your butt up and go brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, and get Johnny's on. You need to go to bed because I can't, that's like a whole nother half hour in itself and I'm exhausted. Yeah. So yeah, when she started doing that, I'm like, oh my, I couldn't believe she did that. Yeah. So I was yelling.
I was like, I picked a really good night to go to bed early. I didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's super easy to kind of lose your patience in those moments, but I think I've learned to kind of just bottle it up or not show Drew that I'm frustrated, but then I take it out on him. And there have been times that I've taken it out on Dawson too, where he does one little thing and I'm just like, why are you doing that?
And that's the hard part with me and JD, because we have a good relationship, but then there's also that fine line because he was always with Jesse doing everything because I was always with Faith. And and I would get on him too. I'm like, I got to take care of your sister. I got to take care of the house. I'm like, pick up your stuff. I don't need to pick up after you too. And then there's times where we just butt heads. And it's sad because I love him to death. He's my son. But there are times, growing up where I was just like, I don't know. It's hard. And I do that with him sometimes too. I'm like, he's like, why are you taking it out on me? I'm like, that's what you do when someone's there and it's sad and I don't mean it, but it's like, oh my gosh, you hit me and ask me something or do something just at the time where I'm just like, I can't anymore.
Yeah. It's a cycle. I will say, my relationship with Dawson is also very good. But I think it's because one time I think he kind of mentioned this, he was in the kitchen and I think I was nagging him or on him about something, probably his homework or his grades, because the boy, was a lot of work to get. I am so thankful he graduated this year and we're done with that. It was
like pulling teeth.
It was tough,
really.
But he got mad at me and he was like, and when you die, I am not taking care of Drew. And I just said, okay, well, I would never put that responsibility on you. And he was probably only like 8. I was like, I would never put that responsibility on you, Drew. That's for my mommy and daddy to figure out. And I'm like, I stood there and I was just like, and then 15 minutes later, he comes back and he's sobbing. I didn't mean what I said, but it's hard because you don't realize the conversations that are taking place in your house and these kids are listening. And that has been one of my biggest fears, is if something happens to us. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for my parents, because if something were to happen to us, Drew is so used to them living here that for him, obviously it's going to be an impact, but it's not going to be as big as if we didn't have that support. And they do. So, like my relationship with Dawson, I feel like he saw me as, I'm definitely more of the disciplinarian. I was the one, do your homework. I was the one checking Power School. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. But over time, I also feel like, if he has a fight with his girlfriend or if he has a problem at work, he calls me. He talks to me about things I think that most boys don't talk to their mom about. And I think it's because he and his dad are so much alike, they don't communicate. But he knows that I'm a talker and that I'll listen and I will try to help. But it wasn't always like that. From my perspective, it was a concerted effort right around that time when Dawson was 8 that I was like, he thinks that I'm, gonna make him take care of his brother for the rest of his life, and he's obviously got some sort of resentment about it, and it was resentment that he has a brother, he was robbed of an older brother, and he's had to take on that role in his life, and it's not fair. It's not fair to him. They're 11 months apart. He had a built-in best friend, but he didn't get that. So he's he's going to have resentment because life just isn't fair sometimes.
Yeah. With JD, it was always Jesse was the fun one, always with the hunting and the BMX, dirt bikes and football and lacrosse and all the fun stuff. While me and Faith were over here like, okay, sitting there, well, what can we do? Well, they were out having fun, So I think that there was a little bit of on mine, a little bit of resentment of them and how much fun they got to do, and they were always going off doing stuff. Where me and Faith were just like, okay, what can we do, so to speak, if that makes sense. And then, but like JD always, it's funny because he doesn't want to disappoint him.
Yeah.
So he will come to me with that kind of stuff, which makes me feel good that he comes to me.
But there was also the discipline piece, like you said. She was usually, the initial discipline, but if it was above her level and it got to me, they knew they were in big trouble. All I had to do is inner drill sergeant come out and yell, and there were just tears and and all that, and like, yeah, we really messed up. But I'm glad, although he and I had that friendly relationship, that he's able to talk to her on things that he doesn't feel comfortable coming to me directly with. And he has her to kind of bounce things off of, because there's a lot of things going on with him, or between college and then military and stuff like that, where he's had some, again, we COVID in college, those difficulties, and then military and injuries or this or that. What am I going to do? Kind of bouncing off mom to get ideas, and he can do that without having to step up and talk to me at that level that he's kind of concerned with. So he has a little, feels more comfortable with doing that and talking to me.
And I always tell them, like, and I know I shouldn't feel bad because it's done and over with. And he always says, Mom, he goes, you're fine. It's not your fault. I understand. Like, there was times that you couldn't be there for me, or, that type of stuff. And I really feel like it makes the kids, they have more patience. They have more resilience. Yes, they have some resentment, but it makes them overall better human beings, having to live that journey and having a sibling with disability, if that makes sense.
Dawson is always the one, up until first grade, they were in the same school, but he's always the one to kind of step in and defend, someone that may not be able to defend themselves. And, he makes me proud in the sense, like, he went into public safety and, is pursuing a career in firefighting. And, he's super proud of himself. He definitely doesn't lack his own self-worth, let me tell you that. But he is a very giving person. He's a very loving person. He, like, every person that has ever met Dawson will say, like, he is the most amazing person. He's so friendly and so outgoing, and he makes you feel like he really cares about what you're saying or what you're talking about. And I feel like in some way he's just taken this autism, like brother with autism, and kind of turned it into making himself a better person, and using it as a way to help others versus just sitting around and feeling sorry for yourself, which is very much the approach that we've taken all these years. Is like, you can sit around and you can feel sorry for yourself, or you can try to help others. And that is the reason why I spent so much time trying to get out into the community and trying to make people aware, because I didn't want people to look at Drew in public and say, oh, he's weird, or why is he doing that? Why, because he'll break out in a song, he'll break out in a dance, he doesn't care. He'll sing his little heart out. And I wanted people to appreciate that he had a different ability, and that he was not just weird, but that there was a reason why. And I think we're doing a better job at acceptance and things like that. It just always kind of strikes me as, why do we have to teach people to be human? And it's a rough world we live in, and I just wanted to make it a better place for him, because I know at the end of the day, I'm not going to live forever.
Yeah.
And when I'm gone,
how does that, I know this is selfish too, but when JD went into the army, you know, I'm so scared for him because of everything that's going on in the world today, you know, but then again, it's selfish because I can't help think of, oh my gosh, what if something happened to him? Who is going to be there for Faith, even if not to take care of her, but just to have that, you know, like with him being a firefighter, do you?
Yeah, it was scary. When I took him down to sign up because he went to the School of Technology for fire science and EMT, and one of the requirements of the program is that you sign up with a volunteer fire company. So when I took him to Charlestown, the first day, the person that he met, his name is Danny Miller, and he had been part of that. There was an explosion over at Lakeside, and he was in that explosion. So he was burnt, like his hands and
arms.
He could see me looking at him, and he's like, "Mom, I promise you, this is not the normal." But yeah, it's scary because you don't know when he gets that call and he goes out. I mean, he just cut someone out of a car the other day in a terrible, terrible accident here on the road that we live on. And there's a sense of pride that he's helping people, but there's also this worry in the back of your mind because you just don't know what you're walking into sometimes. And like
and even just physically getting hurt, but also the trauma of it.
Yeah. I always ask,
you see,
like, you see things
that are, a lot of people never see that in their life
that are terrible. And you know, are you okay? Are you okay? But I think he compartmentalizes it that I'm helping people, and he doesn't focus so much on, you know, like, I just saw a dead body, or, you know, these people's home burned down. Because for me, I would be emotionally invested in that. You know, I would take that on myself. But I haven't seen that in him so far, which is a good thing, because I think you have to have like a certain personality type in order to do that kind of job.
That kind of work. Yeah.
And quite frankly, the brotherhood that he has with the other firefighters down there, they, you know, when he graduated from School of Tech, they brought the fire truck to his graduation. They were honking the horn. Like, he really has like a
family.
Yeah. And
it's like a separate, you know, a different family.
Yeah. And great role models for him, which, you know, because he didn't really have the normal older brother to look up to, it's been nice for him. And it's something that is his and only his. And he doesn't have to share it with Drew. You know, like he was talking about his Chuck E. Cheese, you know, dates and stuff. Like, he doesn't share this with Drew. It's all his.
Yeah.
He talks about it. It's only his. And it's nice also that they found over time something to bond with, right? Like, they both like music, and they both like the same kind of music. So Drew plays drums, Dawson he plays guitar, and he's still practicing and learning, and he's a pretty good singer. And so they get out there and they play music together, and that's a way for them to bond that they may not have had whenever they were younger. So it's nice to see.
It's a common ground for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So another huge topic is having a child with a disability affects family finances. So some have no choice but to be stay-at-home moms because they can't find a daycare that could provide the level of care that some of our children need, whether that's medically, emotionally, physically, and or behaviorally. Not to mention the specialists and therapies most of our kiddos have to go to. I mean, I know I always worked 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet because I couldn't do one full job because of all of the therapies and things like that. And still to this day, I feel I always have something going on the side because I always have to keep myself busy because I think like this is my therapy, is doing the podcast, but I always have to keep myself busy, or otherwise sometimes you sit there and then you just think about the future and the unknowns and the this and the that, so I, which is good and bad to dive into so many things, but it is what it is. But there are so many families out there that don't have the support like you had with your parents, or with me, with my mom being, living on the same property with us, like I can't even fathom some of these people, and it's very expensive. I mean, I could say now it's like we're finally out of debt, and it's like we're like, now I can breathe. It's like before I couldn't even go on a vacation and feel guilty, and I couldn't enjoy myself because I knew that we were just getting ourselves more in debt, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we've struggled with that. Like when we bought our house, it's like I said, we were pretty house poor. I mean, I have been fortunate that I started working for JP Morgan Chase when I was 19. And I've always been able to carry like the health insurance and things like that because the company Dave works for is a very small company. And over the years, I guess from the time Drew was born until he went into High Road, I kept the same job that I had when Dave and I met, because I couldn't, they let me work like 6:30 to 3, and I was home every day to get the boys off the bus, and I was it was flexible that I could take him to the places that I needed to take him to get him the therapy that he needed. And then once he got into High Road and I stopped having all of those extra worries and concerns, I've been able to kind of progress in the company to make more money, and we're in a better place now. But it causes a lot of stress because people don't realize, even when you have insurance, there's co-insurance that you have to pay, for all of these specialists. And
yeah, you're always eating that maximum out of pocket every year. I remember we would do that, and we're like, okay, now it's the time, we got it, so now we got to get the wheelchair so we don't have to pay anything for the wheelchair or the walker, but yeah.
One thing that I did was along the way, and I really think it came from those early days of connection when we went through the advocacy training through the ARC, is that you connect with people that are in a similar situation, and you learn that there are resources out there, and there are things that you can tap into. And if I hadn't had those connections, I wouldn't have known that I could, get like grant money to help pay for Drew's music therapy. And, I wouldn't have known about things like the autism waiver that he finally is on now and is receiving services for. So it's, to me, like the most important thing is that you connect. Like Karen and I, like, your situation is completely different than mine, but we've learned from each other, and we've been able to share that knowledge with a whole group of people, and it's priceless. And I think also finding people that understand and relate to the things that you're going through. I feel like I wouldn't have gotten through those years if I didn't have CCAC, and I didn't have the connections that I had with other moms and some dads that I still have today. And you watch people's kids grow up, you watch their struggles, you watch their success stories, and it just makes you feel less alone than if you didn't have those connections.
Yep.
And I don't even remember how I found this advocacy training that we were in. All I remember is I went to my first IEP meeting when Drew was in infants and toddlers. And I walked into this room, and there was like 15 people in the room, and I was like
staring at you.
Holy crap, like what did I get myself into? And in the first meeting, I think it was probably several years before I even knew what they were talking about half the time in these meetings.
Yep.
And I have had teachers and speech therapists along the way, like they would call me before the meeting and say, this is what you need to ask for your son. And I don't know what I did to deserve people like reaching out to me and kind of embracing me, but I'm forever grateful because I was learning, and I've just been like a sponge, and in learning I passed it on to so many different parents. that, they come to you and they're hopeless.
Yep.
And, you're able to shed a little bit of light into their life and say, look, I know it sounds terrible, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to do these things. I've gone to IEP meetings with parents, and it's something to make them just not feel alone. And you yourself, when you're helping people, it makes you feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel alone. So I'm forever grateful for those relationships that I made, and that I still have to this day.
Yeah. I'd mentioned earlier, that you've been a true advocate not only for Drew, but for so many others. So you were very involved with Pathfinders for Autism when Drew was growing up. And I remember you used to host the fundraisers every year, Band Together for Autism. Can you share a little bit more about that and your involvement with Pathfinders for Autism and what type of resources you received from them? And then also, on the flip side, I hear that that Dawson really would like for you to do another Band Together with two headline.
He
doesn't realize how much work goes into that. It takes a year of planning to put that together. It's not just something you're like, hey, this weekend, let's do a fundraiser.
So back then, like I said, I kept the same job for 10 years and I could do it with my eyes closed back then. It was a lot less responsibility for me at work. And it was a bit therapeutic for me. It was a way for me to share my experience with Drew and our experience in raising a child with autism. And I mean, I've never really been affiliated with Pathfinders, but I felt like they were an organization that was Maryland based, and they give back to our communities here in Maryland. And they, I don't know if you guys are familiar with baseball, but BJ Surhoff, who used to play for the Baltimore Orioles, helped create Pathfinders for Autism. He and his wife Polly have a son on the spectrum, and in a lot of the work that we did, we got to meet a lot of these people that are on the board for Pathfinders, and they were always so warm and welcoming and so down to earth. And they, like one of the things that BJ Surhoff told me when I met him was, you need to teach your son how to swim because kids with autism are drawn to water. And if he knows how to swim, then, you lessen your chances of if he elopes and he runs away, that he's going to go to water and drown. So, of course, Drew wouldn't have anything to do with us teaching him how to swim, but we found these life jackets and we had a pool put in because, I wanted them to be comfortable in water.
I remember when you put that pool in.
Yeah. And he, we put him in the water and it would hold him up, but it isn't like arm floaties. It was like, it went across the chest. So, they could actually like do the swimming motion, and he just taught himself using that device. And, the work that we did with Pathfinders was really like just selling tickets and having a giant party, which is like basically my life every weekend. So, but it's a lot of work. You have to work to get the silent auctions, and you have to,
and that also takes a village too to put that together. We got a lot of people volunteering their time and other things to get that all together.
And so Dawson just thinks that it would, and I don't disagree with him. He thinks that it would be great for people to be able to come back to see Drew and see like how he's grown over the years and how great he is. But one thing I can say is that I've always used social media as a way to make people know about Drew and autism and the challenges that we face as a family and the successes that we've had. Drew goes to School of Tech now, and he's in a Learning for Independence program, which he goes out into the community and he works. So he goes to Guilbault Manor twice a week, and then he also has a paid job at Aramark at University of Delaware. Okay. So he's learning these real life skills. And if you would have asked me even 5 years ago if this would be possible, I would have been like, nope, not possible. But it's insane how if you don't give up on your child and you keep, even if you're going at a snail's pace, you keep marching forward and you keep trying new things and you keep introducing them to new things, and you just keep faith that, you know, one day it's just going to click. Then, you know, one day it does click, and it doesn't matter if it happens, you know, in X amount of time, or if it takes 4 times that amount of time. You still just can't give up on your child. And that was me. Like, I'm never going to give up on my child. And, you know, when they first told me that it wasn't possible for Drew to go to School of Tech because he went to High Road, I was like, okay, well, show me in the rule book, in the law, that says that it's not allowed. And they couldn't. So then they had to figure it out. And if I hadn't gone through all of that advocacy training and, you know, had the connections that I've had over the years, I would have just taken what they said at face value.
Yep.
He wouldn't be where he's at. So, you know, I'm, like I said, I'm just always going to be grateful for the relationships that I forged. And, you know, it's fortunate that I'm kind of a strong-minded person that, you know, okay, if you're going to tell me no, you're going to have to give me a good reason why. Yeah.
I'm just going to take your word for it.
Yeah. What about girls? Tell me about girls.
So Drew, he loves his Paige. I'm sure you've probably seen pictures of Paige, which Paige is also on the spectrum. And Paige is a talker, and Drew is not a good communicator. So sometimes Paige's mom and I have to field interference there because they don't understand each other all the time. But I will tell you that the sun rises and sets on Paige. He loves her. I don't know what it is about her. I couldn't tell you. I mean, she's a very cute girl. But he's been playing baseball with her. He's been playing on the Challenger team since he was 6.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've watched Paige grow up too. And it was so cute the day he said he was going to ask Paige to be his girlfriend. And I said, oh, well, what are you going to say? He said, I'm just going to ask her to be my girlfriend. So when we got to the ball field, he said to Paige, will you come over here? Because he didn't want to say it in front of me. And so he took her over all the way on the other side of the field, and he asked her. And then Paige was like, you know, and she comes over to me and she said, he just asked me to be his girlfriend. And I said, what did you say? She said, well, I didn't say anything because I wanted to come tell you that he said that. I said, well, you better go ask him. He's waiting for you to tell him. And I was just like crossing my fingers, like, please do not tell him no, because that's going to be difficult later. And, you know, but they, you know, like I said, if she doesn't do what he wants her to do in that moment, I'm breaking up with you, and she does the same thing.
Talk to you again.
It's interesting to see how this relationship, you know, folds out. And I say to her mom all the time, I'm like, oh my God, are you as stressed out as I am about their relationship? It's like, yeah. You know,
I actually did an interview with one of the support brokers for the BDA waivers, and so she actually does social skills, and she also works with individuals on relationships and all of that kind of stuff. And you can get it paid. I think pay her through the waiver now. I don't know about autism waiver, but that would be something you guys should look into if they both get services.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, some days, and I will say that, you know, we're very fortunate that Paige's parents, you know, they're very patient, because Drew is not always the most diplomatic person, but, you know, sometimes they will call him and they will say, oh, well, Paige doesn't have her phone right now, just so that, because they understand, right? Like they have a daughter with the same disability. So it's been good having that, you know, that they will pick up the phone and they will call him to try to, you know, calm him down. And they don't seem to take it personally when he's, you know, being a little terror and making demands that Paige call him right now. Because it's all in, you know, that deficit in socialization and communication. And it's like, Paige is she talks a lot, and she's very good at communicating, but she doesn't understand why Drew's not. And she doesn't understand why, you know, sometimes he gets upset, and he's also like, this phone is attached to his hip. So
That's not necessarily the
she's
case with
not,
her.
she could care less about her phone.
Right.
So, he texts her, he expects a response within 2.2 seconds. And if she doesn't, then it's
Why aren't you texting me?
15 texts, like, but we try really hard to kind of manage that situation. And, he always says, when I get married, and it, I always feel like a twinge of, or like Paige and I are going to have kids, and I always feel a twinge of, like sadness, because I know that that's likely not going to happen. And, you kind of, as a parent, go through that same grief process that I talked about in the beginning, that, oh, I'm never going to have this with him, which then puts a lot of pressure on Dawson because he's, like the same with school. Like, you're the only child that I'm going to get to see graduate from high school. So I'm going to need you to step it up. I'm going to need you to get your life together, because it's, this is about me right now.
I love that show, Love on the Spectrum.
Oh, it's so good. Like, it kind of gives me goosebumps when I see, because I think people sometimes don't realize that people with disabilities have those same wants and dreams that we do. And, it's sad to think that, because for me, I feel like I at times will put my own perspective on what I think things should be on Drew, whereas he's perfectly happy with he and Paige having this relationship. And as long as she texts him whenever he texts her and she calls him, he's perfectly fine with it, even though they don't see each other every day. So I don't know what's going to happen, but, as long as he's happy, I'll do everything that I can to support it, and, make sure that they have, like Kim and I, her mom, will take them out on a double date, and we're both sitting across from each other listening to them argue.
Seems to be their favorite thing.
The last time I told her we needed to start going to places that serve alcoholic beverages so that we can have a drink and, at least, take the edge off.
Oh my. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share, or any advice that you would like to give families out there? And actually, I would have from if each of you can share your perspectives on that, especially because the males, you don't hear from a lot from the fathers. So let's start with you, Dave.
Advice for, I don't know, you just gotta, like she said before, just stick to your guns and work things out, even though if you're not making great progress and great strides. Even if you get there, and like you said, at a snail's pace, don't give up on it. You get as much knowledge as you can about what's in your community to help you out with things like that, and so getting together with other families to try to figure things out, because you might have some common ground there with them, and they can help you in ways you never even thought of. And just keep pushing ahead and just keep going. That would be my advice: is learn as much as you can.
Yeah. I would say, don't lose yourself in it. It's great to be a parent that wants to help your child, but understand too that you're a better parent if you take the time for yourself and you invest in your own mental health. And then just finding people and relationships with people that you can in some way relate to, I think is really therapeutic in, just being able to, whether it's a complaint about the school system or a complaint about a doctor, or, my son's doing this, I don't know what to do about it. Sometimes you don't even really need an answer. You just need somebody to listen that truly understands what you're going through. And, I can tell you, I truly believe that. And like I said, I don't even remember how I got on the path to finding those connections through the ARC and CCAC, but it really did save me at that time, because I was really in a dark place. I was watching my friends have kids that were doing things that I wanted to see Drew doing. And it was a really, really difficult time.
Yeah, and it's
for
just going to keep building as it goes, you know, like you said, elementary to the middle to the high school to, you know, graduating to getting your driver's license, going to the prom, getting married, having kids. So you have to relive like that grief over like each time.
Every milestone you grieve.
Yeah. And I know for me, I know where I struggle sometimes when I'm out with people, because I consider myself outgoing. I can talk to anybody, but to have like a real like sometimes I sit there, I'm like, I don't have anything else to talk about besides faith and what we do, because I don't have any other like. If that
I struggle with people ask me what my hobbies are, and I don't have any. You know, like my life has been Drew.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and managing that situation. But, you know, most people have some sort of hobby, but,
mm-hmm.
you know, I don't have any talent either. I can't draw. I can't cook. I can't play music.
But you can advocate. That's your talent.
Hot mess over here, but.
All right, let's talk words. So I sent you guys a flyer about what's your word. You know all about it. So tell me what word you would choose and why. Who wants to go first?
Well, my word would be patience. And I say that only because coming into, you know, us getting together and Drew, I never was a patient person. I always got to be, this is what we got to do, and this is what you need to have it right now and do right now and get this over. But I've learned over the years that patience leads to success in this situation, and something I still struggle with, but yeah, patience would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, working.
If you don't have that, then you're not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah. Do you want yours on a keychain, or would you like it on a black corded bracelet?
I'd like it on a check for $2 million. A keychain would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and how about you, Kathy?
I think mine would be hope. I think I have always just kept hope that even if things are really bad right now, and, you know, we went through some really rough times when he was younger, but I just always kept hope that he would somehow figure it out. And he did. I mean, it's just, you know, new hills to climb as they grow up and get older. But, you know, I just always keep in the back of my mind that what things are like today may not necessarily be what they're like tomorrow. Hold on to the hope that things will get better.
And how about you? Would you like yours on a keychain or a bracelet?
She'd also like the check.
Bracelet.
Check too. Huh?
A bracelet. I think all of us would enjoy a check, but
yes. All right, I'm going to send you the different, I have different color bracelets. I'll send you the list so you can look. So, well, I thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day. I just think that it's so important to spread awareness and share the journeys that we live day to day, you know, to help others get through and know that they're not alone. And I just want to thank you. So with that being said, you're welcome. So until next time, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show to the masses. If you would like to support the Guilbault Girls on another level, click on the link in the show notes to make a donation in any amount. Add your address and you'll receive a hand-stamped token with the word village on it in appreciation. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls. Till next time.